electric charging infrastructure is already in the country, and I think we haven't communicated this enough.
The Smart Mobility Africa Live Summit was back on South Africa's shores late last month in digital form in light of COVID-19. The South Africa Electric Vehicle Buyer Survey was released at the summit, which allowed stakeholders to gain insights into how car buyers perceive electric vehicles, which have revealed some very interesting facts about electric vehicle penetration, expectations, purchase intent, as well as brand awareness and trust. Now, we're joined by AutoTrader CEO George Mienie to give us some details on the outcomes of the summit. A very good afternoon to you, George Mienie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Keo. Always nice to be with you.
A pleasure, likewise. Now, what was the overall goal, first of all, of these Smart Mobility Summit in South Africa, and why is the summit so important, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, simply put, the main goal of the summit, Keo, is being hosted by Generation E, was to bring together the most influential automotive stakeholders in Africa and to drive a future mobility in Africa, but specifically EV adoption or electric vehicle adoption. And when you look at the rest of the world and markets around the world and the predictions that exist towards 2030 and particularly 2035, a few countries are front runners, notwithstanding Europe, who has Norway with the highest EV penetration per capita in the world. And then you obviously have China, which is approaching now 2 million electric vehicles on their roads today. So the deadlines for EV adoption in the world stage or on the world stage is getting closer and closer. And the South African gross domestic product for vehicles and vehicle sales is 7% of our GDP, which is a big chunk. And so with the prediction that a third of the world's cars will be EVs by the end of this decade or even 2035, we need to change very quickly. And so this is a platform, or was a platform, for stakeholders to get together and address these challenges.
Now, for the summit, AutoTrader released the South African Electric Vehicle Buyers Survey, which revealed a few insights into where South Africa actually stands currently from an EV penetration point of view, the perceptions about electric vehicles, the purchase intent, and a whole lot of other factors. Just break down some of those insights that were revealed for us.
Well, we surveyed over 3,000 people from AutoTrader's platform, and less than 2% of the respondents in South Africa have ever owned an EV. And just less than 14% have ever experienced an EV. But the surprising number was that 68% of consumers want to own an EV in South Africa, where people between the ages of 18 and 54 years old are considering buying an EV within the next 5 years, and people older than 55 years old, which is also surprising, are wanting to buy an EV within the next 3 years. And consumers want much better charging in order to buy an EV, which was quite evident in the report. And then they want 50% better public fast charging. So those are the two challenges that consumers perceive to face. But I think the biggest challenge was that consumers are looking for EVs for under 500,000 Rand. And, if consumers are looking for EVs for under 500,000 Rand, the cheapest EV on the road today is a Mienie SE for 642,000 Rand.
Would you then say that price is also a bit of a barrier of entry for South Africans willing to buy these EVs? Also considering the fact you mentioned about the fast charging, we've got a bit of an instability with our power supply that also could pose a problem.
Well, yes and no. The instability is one thing. The city of Tshwane, as a matter of fact, did a study that proved that EVs do not place pressure on the grid. And that's because consumers have to change their lifestyles. When it comes to EVs, I like to use the example of we have to go back to when we used to ride horses. You can't fill an EV as a destination fill like we do ICE vehicles at the moment, or internal combustion engine vehicles. You plug it in like your telephone overnight when there is the least amount of pressure on the grid. So while we have instability issues with load shedding and the like, the times at which we charge our EVs or will charge our EVs in the future are overnight, and you can charge an EV for the next day's trip within 12 hours. So really, it's just a lifestyle change, Karen.
And just lastly, based then on the events of the Smart Mobility Summit, would you say that South Africa is ready for EV adoption? And when do you think we can start seeing more and more EVs on our roads?
Well, the truth of the matter is electric charging infrastructure is already in the country, and I think we haven't communicated this enough. South Africa sits with one electric charger for every 4 vehicles that are currently on South African roads. And I mean, fair enough, the penetration of EVs is low, but around the world, the penetration of electric chargers per number of EVs is 1 in 20. So we're ahead of the curve when it comes to electric charging stations. You can't go more than about 200 kilometers without finding an electric charger or an EV charger on South African roads. And in major metropolitan areas like Johannesburg, Durban, and Cape Town, you don't have to travel more than about 20 to 30 kilometers and you will find a charger. However, what I said before is still true, in that most EV charging will happen overnight in your home. But the biggest elephant in the room for EV adoption, Keo, is the price. Currently, to import an electric vehicle the import tax is around 25%, north of 25% for that matter. And the import duty on an ICE vehicle, an internal combustion engine vehicle, is 18%. So the government, we have to work with the government in order to bring those initial taxes down, even if it's for a period of time, in order to get EV adoption. And if we can bring the initial cost of the EV down below 500,000 Rand, I'm pretty confident that we will see an electric future. And our 7% of our GDP is in our hands to lose.
Well, thank you so much for sharing those insights. I think if it costs less than $500,000, I might be inclined to get one for myself. That was George Mienie, the CEO of AutoTrader, just talking to us about the electric motor vehicle and its future in South Africa.